Hello and welcome. If you haven't joined us before, welcome to the Property Experts podcast. We stream live every Friday on YouTube, and we also put this out as a podcast. For new joiners, we share our highs and lows across the businesses that we run. We've got a number of award-winning businesses, 6, 7, and 8-figure businesses, which we've built up from the ground and had highs and lows, struggles and growths. And hopefully this episode we'll share some of that snippet insight and give you some tips on how you can improve your business processes and growth. So for podcast listeners, it's the 26th of July. That's 3 days before my birthday, if you didn't know. And we've got a jam-packed episode today, which we'll be running through. So we're going to start off with which documents you should have always in your sort of folder ready to go if you're in property or business to make life easy. We'll be talking about XP Survey's event that we host in Henley, why we put on the event, how the event went, and what the talks were about. I was privileged to co-host Brendan Quinn's Central London Property Meet yesterday evening, so I'll be sharing some really interesting topics that were shared about Labour government, legislation, and actually some quite interesting sort of rabbit holes we went down from a really experienced panel, including Tom, our project manager at XP. We'll be sharing our Chertsey site, which is a light industrial project, and the exchange on that site and what that is. We've got some interns starting next week in our business from Reading University, so we'll be sharing a little bit more about that. Bikes and sites. If you're into bikes, hang around for point 6. We've talking about our site in West Drayton, which you might have think we've been a bit quiet on for the last few months, and we'll be sharing exactly why. We were forced to sell it, but we'll be sharing what that looks like. Branding on Muswell Hill. If you joined us last week, we were talking about choosing branding types for our luxury development in North London in Muswell Hill. We put it to you guys to come to a vote, and we might have the results in. We'll be sharing our Thame project and showing you the amazing things that we've been doing, which I think will break ceiling value in Thame. We'll be sharing whether we're sharing too much with our team and whether you should be sharing with your team. And the benefits of doing company reviews.
And as always, if you've got any questions, drop them down below. If we've got time today, we might go through some questions that people have messaged us about over the last couple of weeks. But on to point number 1, having an updated documents folder. This is something we introduced quite a long time ago, right?
Yeah, we did. So obviously, Ben and I growing the businesses, it was always us compiling information and administration. And our first hire in pretty much any business is sort of office management, personal assistant, executive assistant, or admin role, because we think that's a really good return on investment. Because what it does is it buys your time back, which is normally a lot more valuable than the sort of average wage for those types of roles. And we got into a super early routine in this, whether you Dropbox, Google Drive. Keep a folder of things that you're constantly going to need for the work that you do. So if you're in property investment, buying properties or arranging finance or whatever it may be, you kind of always need ID. So that's a scanned ID, proof of address and scanned proof of address. Obviously, the proof of address does need to be done frequently, normally within 3 months. And then you commonly need to get these certified. So what I would suggest is every time you go to see your lawyer, even if it's just to sign one document, take your passport and take a proof of address, and while you're there, get them to stamp it and sign it and certify it, because it will save you a load of aggro when you've got a transaction happening in 6 weeks' time, and then you've got to make a specific journey to go over there. Even better, get them to, I don't know if I should share this actually, get them to do it but not date it, because you're a trusted customer of theirs, and they know who you are and they know where you live, and maybe they could date it at a later date if they need to rally one together without you maybe being in the country or t'other. We've actually had it, Ben, haven't we? When I think one of us, our investor and the seller, were all in different countries. All 4 of us. So me, you, our investor, and the seller of a property were all in different countries on a transaction. It was an absolute nightmare. We had to send IDs and paperwork back from Singapore and all sorts. So have all of these things ready so that it makes your life easier. And then assets and liability document, always be trying to update those and keep those in check. You shouldn't have to be building these from scratch. It is an absolute pain when you build an assets and liability doc and then a bank asks you to put it in their format. And that's one of the beauties of working with a broker, because you can just throw it at them and go, this is why I'm paying you a fee. You're here to do the administration here. Your track record, so your business experience and what you've been doing, that might be super useful for lenders. Personal guarantee list. This is something that we get asked for quite frequently. Our investors like to see what exposure that we have if we're guaranteeing any finance with them. And then organization chart and project chart. So organization chart is obviously the group structure, which might be useful for accountants or solicitors or even investors. But also a project chart, which we've started making a lot more accurate and tying a project chart into a balance sheet, which sounds crazy, but it's actually really straightforward. You're just working out the debt and the equity ratio on assets, so that it communicates with your management accounts and balance sheets. But all of these things, if you do improve them sort of 10% every month and get them up to date, you're saving yourself a lot of time. And even if that is even if your team, help manage that. Tess in our team does help manage mine and Ben's assets and liabilities and personal guarantee list and organization chart and project chart. So getting into that routine is definitely the way to go for saving time. And it is painful when you've got to compile loads of documents and pull it all together. My favorite thing is when you've got more than one application at once, you just forward the same email with everything on it, and it's super easy. But yeah, it's arduous with what the banks need to know. And one last thing that you need to keep in there for the lenders is your inside leg measurement. That's always useful.
And often they want your shirt as well. I would say, like, top tip as well is to just diarize every quarter to update the things that might be out of date. So more often than not, proof of addresses need to be within the last 3 months, for example. So just diarize something in your calendar to revisit that, download your Thames Water Utilities bill or whatever, upload it to the drive, and then you've done it and it's there ready for Tess or whoever when they need to come and send it to someone. So yeah, hopefully that's been useful. It's we've bought a site on average about every 4 weeks is the sort of statistic, and obviously that's a lot of paperwork, a lot of shuffling around, a lot of applications. If we didn't systemize and process this type of that process, then we would be wasting so much time. So the more efficient you can be on that front, the better. Good one. And then point number 2, we have been doing for the last year, every sort of quarter to half year, a networking event called the Build and Bond event. It's been based in Henley-on-Thames and it's been hosted by XP Surveys, Jack and I and the team, in a place called the Bull on Bell Street in Henley-on-Thames. And we spend about 4 hours kind of networking and then also putting on some interesting talks from experts in their field. So we've had the likes of the director and founder of a company called Lumi Plugin, which is a really fancy system for fire sprinklers, which integrate lights, carbon monoxide fittings, heat detection, smoke detection, all with inside a light fitting. We've had David Kemp from a planning consultant giving updates on the latest permitted development rights and how you can implement them in your own developments. We've had Claire Truman from Heritage Revival talking about listed buildings and how you should be designing around those and retrofitting against them. And the idea is to bring mainly architects and built environment professionals into the same room. This week we had Louis Slade from Mace Davies talking about the new building regulations principal designer role, which is all around the Building Safety Act, which is an absolute shit show, if I'm honest. And it's causing a lot of confusion. The principal designer role for building regulations is different from the principal designer's role of the construction design and management regulations. And it's the same term, but they have different roles and responsibilities and duties. So if you are an architect, if you are a developer, you need to start understanding these latest changes. They do have a big impact on the amount of paperwork and templates and checklists and paperwork that you need to kind of do for a project. But it's super important if something does go wrong. This was all brought in through the Grenfell inquiry, and fundamentally, if shit hits the fan, you need to make sure that you've got the right paperwork and you've gone through the right processes, that you are competent enough to build the right team, that the team that you've built is competent enough and have the right skill set and knowledge base. And that's what it's all about. We also had Cameron from Loxon, which is a sort of home automation software company. So integrating all of your different AV, CCTV, heating, lighting, sound requirements into a house, into one little box. And he can save people a lot of money with the building management systems that they introduce, the building energy solutions that they install. to make your house run way more efficiently and save you money effectively in the long run. So this is the sort of thing that we're trying to do once every quarter to every 6 months. We had about 30 people in the room. We'd love to continue building upon that. I think first time around we had about 20 people and 25. Now this time 30, and we want to continue building upon that. It's a great opportunity for people in Oxfordshire and surrounding areas to come together and learn more about the industry. It's kind of a mini CPD and a chance to network with other developers, other architects, other built environment professionals. So thanks to you if you did come to it. It was a great success, and we hope to see you next time.
Yeah, I just think from more of a holistic business ownership perspective, obviously the reason that we put these events on is one, because we enjoy pulling together relevant talks because we learn a lot on changes in the market and construction and in design. But also, if you're a service-based business, it's thinking about how do you build a relationship with customers that aren't yet a customer, and that's basically where the sort of evergreen idea came from the events. And it does work. We've got 2 local firms in Henley-on-Thames that have been to 2 events before they bought from us. And we do, you may hear about it's forever changing, 7 touch points, 9 touch points, social media, 5 touch points, and then 1 face-to-face, whatever phrase or methodology you want to sort of tag to it. But I suppose for me, I believe that if someone does come to our event twice, there's an extremely strong chance that we're going to get to at least quote on their work and meet them face to face and hopefully support local businesses. And off the back of that, they get a tailored service because we've had the time to chat to them, and they get invited to events that we put on like this.
Nice.
So yeah, maybe thinking about the old school form of marketing, which is I call this the hardware, not the software of marketing, like flyers, walking, stomping the roads and knocking on office doors, hosting your own events and trying to pull from attractive topics. But in eventuality, actually, they realize that the service we offer is something that they could work well with. So anything else to add on that?
Only if you like pigs in blankets outside of Christmas time, then that's the type of spread we put on. So if you're into that, that's also available for you. But yeah, no, nothing else. Cool. How was Brendan's event last night?
Really good actually. I love Brendan's events. Very informal. The first 5 minutes of the event being going on, you had Brendan and Aaron arguing about who was going to be on stage talking, and I just love how raw and fun and relaxed that environment is. But there was so I was privileged to host a panel with 4 people on it, and we were predominantly talking about the current market state, changes that are coming in from a government perspective, but also from a legislation perspective, which is actually more what we talked about. We had Josh Guest on the panel, who is a Airbnb managing agent and owns his own Airbnbs, and he was interestingly talking about the potential licensing change for Airbnbs, which I knew was coming. If you look at the licensing and legislation for HMOs, it's you really have to know what you're doing to produce a compliant HMO with relevance to fire protection, fire doors, fire seals. We even have to fire board underneath stairs, access for the tenants to get out the properties and things like that. And Airbnbs have no legislation or safety with relevance. I don't even believe you need to put a fire blanket in the kitchen, because obviously it's a standard home that you're repurposing for short letting accommodation. So the interest around the legislation is Scotland has already done it. It's mandatory to have a planning use class change. Apparently the UK is currently in 2 minds whether it's going to go down the planning or the licensing route. From what Josh was saying, the licensing route is you obviously have to declare what you're doing, which I think makes sense. For someone to not for the council, for the fire brigade, for anyone to not know that there's an Airbnb property there. It does cater for different things. There might be a different safety element that needs to be factored in. He was also mentioning from a licensing perspective, they're looking to bring in something called grandfather rights, which is where if you're already operating as an Airbnb, you don't necessarily need to get approval from a licensing or planning perspective. And from a planning perspective, he mentioned that obviously if you are C1 use class, which is B&Bs, B&Bs and hotels, you are okay, because you've actually got full planning for that to be short-term, technically, accommodation. But they're looking at bringing out a new use class, which would be C5, which would come into play. And if you wanted to obviously use your property as an Airbnb and and they bring out, you have to go through planning. You'll have to get a change of use from C3 to C5 in terms of planning. Obviously, a thing to be acknowledging is the 90-day rule. So any person is allowed to Airbnb their house up to 90 days without any of those current legislations or outstanding. So it seems like they're refining it, which I think is good. I think it needs it.
Are they changing, Jack? I thought I read somewhere that sort of C3 and C5 will have permitted development rights to kind of transfer between, or maybe that's just something I read in.
No, so I believe the reason that they're bringing out C5 is so that you have to go through the full process of, you know, putting a planning application in so that you can go through the consultation period with neighbours, which is the main concern. And they'll obviously then they'll be bringing compliance around safety. You know, they're going to look at an application and go, hang on a second, you know, how do people get out of here if there's a fire in the bottom floor flat and the top floor flat don't know? So I think it's starting to unravel to be a lot more complicated. And believe it or not, when before we set up Central Suites, me and Rob were speaking about Airbnb or HMO. And our main concern with Airbnb is the lack of regulation in the space. And we thought that it was going to get slapped with stuff like this. And it does hugely change the model. It sounds like what they are doing is going to make it more difficult to grow. It's going to make it more less competitive because it's going to wean out a lot of unprofessional Airbnb owners, because there's a lot of people that have moved into this space, especially since COVID. So I think it's an interesting space to be in. And if I'm really honest, I'm quite glad we stuck to HMOs. I like the slow churn, the slower life. Than, you know, if someone's renting a property for one night, their need for everything to be perfect is so much more on your case. We have done Airbnbs. We've Airbnb 2 units in St Helens Mill. I've Airbnb my house in Henley. I've Airbnb a flat in London for 3-4 years actually, and it, you know, it does have a purpose. But I do like the HMO element to it. We also talked about principal designer role, and as Ben mentioned on Wednesday, we confused everyone with that in the audience of XP Surveys event. We did the same at Brendan's event. It was interesting because we did have architects, contractors, structural engineers, and people that sort of knew a bit about it, but they also agreed that it's a very complicated area to be dealing with. So what I mainly took away from both is just when you're taking on a project, however simple it may be, you know, during the planning process, you really want to get someone involved to make sure that the responsibility for the principal designer role is outlined and understood, which is key. We talked about Help to Buy, and that the Labour government are looking to bring in a buying incentive for first-time buyers and sort of lower value buyers, which I think would be great for developers, for the market, to stimulate the market. And there is also talks of inflating stamp duty and land tax for international buyers. So anyone buying from outside of the UK will be paying more in stamp duty, which I also think is good, because I think it allows more stock to be bought on a home soil. And if they did really want to buy it, they've just got to stomach the tax. What is done with that tax is another thing. But it's kind of like, you know, maybe less transactions, but the same value. So, you know, why not? Let's see how we get on in that respect. And then one last really interesting point, which I found probably the most interesting out of actually all of these, is Sam Lowney, who was on the panel, and also Dan Green, who was on the panel, were talking about student accommodation, so specifically speaking about PBSA and HMOs. Are struggling in certain locations if you're not particularly in a really good, you know, obviously there's outstanding what do they call the best unis? What's it called? There's a terminal. Sorry?
No idea, to be honest.
Russell Group. There we go. Okay. If you're a Russell Group, yeah, obviously there's top tier university, Oxford, Cambridge, and then you've got Russell Groups like Bristol, York, etc. That will always drive students wanting to go there. But there's secondary and tertiary areas that aren't performing so well, and there's actually, you know, room rates are dropping and void rates and vacancy occupancy rates are dropping. I haven't seen that. We operate in areas where there isn't a university in Central Suites, and we have actually seen our voids reduce. You know, our voids were super low anyway. But my view is that, and this is what I sort of said back to the collective, I sort of said, well, if people aren't going there to study for university, yes, granted, there is going to be a lower percentage of that population that is of studying age, but you can't ignore that people between 20 to 40 years old live in HMOs, and that will still make up 20 to 30% of that population regardless. So if you've got, for an example, in Henley-on-Thames, we have 15,000 people that live here, and a lot of people would argue that Henley-on-Thames is a big enough place to run a HMO. But if you look at the age gap between 20 and 40-year-old people, that's like 4,000 people. So I'm sure you could let 100 bedrooms here. So that's how I particularly look at it. What I did mention to sort of everyone out there in the audience, I said, if you're looking to go to a location with a HMO portfolio that you haven't yet started, it sounds like it's more logical to go somewhere that has a good university or a really good economic environment that doesn't rely on education. And that is exactly where I think we've struck well in our portfolio in Abingdon, because you've got 2 business parks. You've got Milton Park, as well as another large business park just outside Didcot. And pretty much 95% of our tenants work there. So I think if you get a good economic employment area, that can probably be just as, if not more important than university. And also they stay there for longer. So there's no degree that they finish or do a master's and then clutter off. So it's good.
Nice. Lots of really cool learnings. I mean, one thing I would say about Brendan's event, it's always, great to speak to other people in the development and investment space. So if you've not come along to that, it's based in London Bridge. It is the 3rd Thursday or 4th Thursday?
4th Thursday of every month.
Of every month. So get it in your diary, look it up on Eventbrite. It's the Central London Property Network. We've been sponsoring it as Aura Architecture for the last, 4 years now. And it looks like, is that Tom being a representative of Aura last night?
That was actually Tom being a representative of Harron Construction. I did Aura. Yeah.
Okay, fair.
I put it back onto that photo because that was on there, and it gave you a bit more branding.
Nice.
Yeah. I will say though, there isn't an event in August for Brendan. It starts back in September. He only takes off August and December for his events.
Nice. Good, cool. If you're interested in working with developers like us, wanting to grow from a investment or a small HMO business and want to start doing developments of your own, we do have a boardroom. There are spaces left to join that. If you want to grow to your business to a 7 or 8 figure development business, then we can help you with all of the sales, the marketing, the operations, the finance, the talent requirement of that. And also help you find opportunities, structure them, fund them, take them through planning, deliver them, and sell them at the tail end. If you're interested in that, type boardroom below or drop us an email. Cool. And then some really good news on Tuesday, finally, after many months of negotiations and going through the planning permission processes with various applications. We exchanged on a light industrial site in Chertsey. Jack, can you give a quick overview, and I will bring up that video that.
Yeah, of course. So this site is a part office, part industrial building, originally used as a printer's press. We were buying it off a landlord that previously let the building to a printer's press. It was actually Aaron that secured this in our business. Chertsey is kind of like West London, in a really good location, just inside the M25. And with good access into the city. So obviously the first thing that we think when we look at this site is it's got prior approval or PD potential for conversion to residential. Believe it or not, it sides onto and is opposing to residential all the way around. Yes, it is, yeah. It's literally resi all the way around the site. As you can see in the video there, for our video listeners, I think it's just pause. That front brick building is the old office where they obviously had all their office admin team running all the paperwork business. And then at the back here with all the Velux windows is actually a sort of a tin, industrial storage space that was used as the printer's press with access down the right-hand side for parking. So we've been battling a little bit with this with planning. But we've got halfway there. We believe we've had to do a certificate of lawful use application as well as a prior approval planning application. But as you can see, lots of massing and lots of scope to convert this to resi. And we're super excited to get kicked on with this project. Like Beckton Court, we're in 2 minds whether we deliver or sell. So if you are interested in looking for a development, do reach out to us and we can share the information on the site. Anything else to add, Ben?
Yeah, if you missed out on some of the back history on this, I think 3 or 4 episodes ago I talk about a certificate of lawful use application process that we went through and what all that's about. I talked a little bit more about Class MA and Grampian conditions. So if you haven't checked that out, go and check it out. It's, I think 3 or 4 episodes ago. A certificate of lawful existing use is very handy to have in your arsenal and back pocket of your understanding of development, because what this site didn't have is a genuine, it basically had a nil use class. We had to prove that it had been used as a light industrial class E commercial space before then being able to submit any class MA application to convert it to residential. So, if you need to prove use, that's the sort of process that you're going to have to go through. So tune in 3 or 4 weeks ago, and if you want to learn more about certificates of lawful use. Cool. And then Jack's been busy in the background, not so much for XP, but more for central suites, and a little bit of XP surveys now because of the way that things have played out. But been in contact with the University of Reading, who are looking to put some of their talented graduates into an internship position with the sort of businesses that we run.
Yeah, so just worthwhile sharing that I can't actually remember how we found out about the University of Reading doing this internship program, but long story short, the university supports some of their pay. They do a summer internship, so it's about 6 to 8 weeks depending on their availability, working within your company 5 days a week, and then they obviously go back to study in their second or third or master's year. And there is scope to then work throughout the last year, maybe a day a week or half a day a week, and then also a graduate role on completion. But what is super interesting is, these students, they're studying building surveying, they're studying real estate, they're studying quantity surveying, and that, they are learning about all the theoretical stuff. And you can see that they're gagging to get some practical experience behind what they've learned in their class, whether it's down to, one of the candidates has been working on SketchUp and 3D modeling buildings, and obviously really keen to work on a project for a business where it actually is end to end, and then other candidates that have been learning more about quantity surveying and want to understand how the whole project life cycle comes together. So it's super excited for them to start. I think we've got potentially 4 joining. We've had 3 accept and then 1 more to go. So the office is going to be really full on Monday because we've got another new starter as well.
We don't have space for that. Yeah, that's going to be mad. But good for them. They'll get lots of experience, and we get a lot of resource to use and put to good use. One thing that I really wanted to touch on, I mean, we're relatively established business now, kind of 6-7 years in. When I was very early days in Aura, I joined a Kingston University sort of business and marketing internship program, I guess you could call it. But it was a couple of open days where us as business owners were allowed to go in and present to the sort of final year graduates in the Kingston University. And what I found, it was an absolutely amazing opportunity to go in there and almost sell your business to these people. And I ended up taking on a young marketing graduate who was phenomenal when he joined Aura for a year, but he was recently graduating. They do these events typically in May and June, with the view that the year end is July, August, and these people go off and do their own thing. But if you can get in there as a young business, basically pick the cream of the crop from the group. I remember presenting to the crowd, and he was putting his hand up, asking those really great questions. He came over to me at the end and was like, I love what you do. Came across really well. CV was so strong. Performance throughout university was great. And you've basically got the cream of the crop of that university coming to you, asking you for a job, instead of you reaching out to job agencies, recruiters, posting on LinkedIn that you've got this role in the business and hoping that somebody kind of sees it, picks it up, and comes forward. It was a great opportunity to get in their faces and give you the opportunity to sell yourselves to really talented individuals. So it's something that we probably don't look at enough, and should look at what different universities have going on in terms of internships and sort of graduate placement opportunities. So really useful. Cool. Bikes and Sites. I like the name of that. That's good.
I can't take the credit for that. It was actually Todd that came up with that.
Nice.
Yeah, this is the second bikes and sites trip we've done out. We think we're so cool going out on a Sunday, cruising around some sites. Last Sunday, we had the privilege to go and actually have a look at some sites. He's got a really tricky site with an arboriculturist and a planning officer. But yeah, just shouting out to anyone out there that wants to maybe do a site tour on bikes, to reach out. All levels welcome.
This is motorbikes, people.
Sorry?
This is motorbikes.
Yeah.
Cycle bikes.
Yeah, I mean, it would take a long time to get around sites on a cycle bike. But yeah, if anyone's into motorbikes, give us a shout, because we had 4 on the first time, 3 on the second. And we've actually had a few people with interesting supercars that have said, I wouldn't mind coming around as well. So yeah, anyone out there, reach out and we'll add you to the list.
You'd have to change the name though if you get some supercars on there as well.
Yeah, I'll leave that to Todd.
Fair. Cool. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, thanks very much. We'd love a comment and a like. The likes actually do help. So, you know, if you are watching this and getting value from it, just give us a quick like. And if you could just share it with one person that you know is in the property development space, or is a SME developer or a one-man band sole trader that wants to grow their business and take it to the next step, please do share this, because I think they will get huge value from having sort of learned vicariously through what we've done and learn from our mistakes and the good stuff that we're doing. So, thank you very much for if you are tuning in. And likewise, if you're on the podcast, whether that be on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do drop us a rate on Spotify and drop us a review on Apple if you can. It goes a long way. Thank you very much. Cool. West Drayton. So yeah, like Jack said in the intro, this is a site that we've been very, very quiet on. I think we when did we buy this? Like, it must have been.
I think it was March.
Is March last year though, or was it this year? I feel like we've owned this for decades, but we clearly haven't. It's a former chapel that's been converted or was converted and used as a solicitor's offices for I think like 20 years. It's got a couple of retail units at the ground floor, so there's a nail bar and something else. But it's something that we got planning approval for 6 flats, I think, in the end, and retaining some of the retail space. We got the planning approval, but we basically had a really good offer, didn't we, for someone to come in and buy it from us. And ultimately, that's how things have progressed. So I think Friday last week or Monday this week, we actually completed on that sale after lots of back and forth, lots of renegotiation. We ended up being quite creative with how that kind of process worked. And Jack, actually, you're probably best off explaining how we did actually negotiate and agree to sell over a period of time.
Yeah, it was super complicated, really complicated actually. And kudos to Aaron to sticking with the moderate detail. He loves a creative deal. So we marketed the building to prove it's not fit for renting. We did get interest from a Muslim foundation. We actually bought the site for just over £900,000. They originally offered £900,000, and we just sort of said no, not going to work. Minimum value is 1.2. Don't come back to us until you have that value to come back to us with. They came back to us again with another half a dozen offers before getting to 1.2, and then we then started to get into the crux of the terms of the acquisition, because they're a religious foundation that are local. They were all technically crowdsourcing and crowdfunding all the equity to buy the property, so they needed to run that in the background. They're very confident they did. They had some people pledged, so they wanted to delay the completion, which we didn't necessarily have an issue with. So we've sort of said, okay, get the exchange done. One top tip for the exchange and a delay completion is we requested that the exchange fees gets released to agent, which means that the seller gets that funds in their bank account and it doesn't sit on solicitor's account. Reason that we did that is because they were pushing for like a 9-month delayed completion, and to have best part of 120 grand sat in a solicitor's account for that long is just nonsensical. So we drew that down on exchange, and between exchange and completion, we were collecting rent from the existing retail units, and we allowed the new buyer to go in and rent the main chapel space. So we were also collecting rent from the new buyer. the reason that we didn't just give them free will to go into the property and occupy it as much as that's what they were proposing for, they had no incentive to do it any quicker. So therefore, we knew that if we charge rent every month, they'd be incentivized to do it quicker, because the minute they have their money together, they're not paying for rent anymore, they're buying the site. So that's how it transpired. I think the long stop completion date was not for another 3 months. And they brought the date forward because they were in funds and they didn't want to pay rent. So they brought the date forward, which benefited us and them. So that's how the transaction happened. And we ended up completing on the sale this week, which was great. And it's pretty much all said and done now. We're just finalising divvying up splits and bits and bobs. Investors already been paid back their original investment. So it's just margin left in the bank account, which is good.
Nice. Yeah, really creative way of doing things. And that's what we like to do. We don't always build stuff out. If it makes sense to sell it on, why not? Cool. If you tuned in 2 weeks ago, then you would have been shown the attached branding options. So we put three options forward, A, B, or C. This is for our Muswell Hill project in North London. Luxury development of 9 units. Cracking on site now. Really, the party wall awards have come in, so the basement works have been started. Jack showed me a photo. Actually, I hadn't seen it, but the whole rear of the site is like ripped apart. So they're putting that back together now with the new extensions and piecing things, stitching it back together. But at the moment, because we want to launch it to market as soon as possible, we have agreed for a sales agent to come in, and we've chosen that sales agent. So we're now turning our hands to the branding of the site identity, the hoarding, the brochures, the micro website, and all that sort of stuff. So our branding team, which is on this one, Oliver James of Property Branding, sent us over some options. We sent it out to the masses. If you've been following us on Instagram, you'd have seen us do a poll of this, so you'd have had your chance to tell us what you think is the correct and right brand identity to use. And it was a resounding winner for B. Which was actually my favorite choice. So that is the one that I preferred from day one. What we did test then afterwards was different colors. So I felt like the branding was right in terms of logo and text and font style and things like that, but wanted to sort of test the colors around that. And we had a green one and more of a look like a brownie one. But we have ended up going back to the original brand B with the autumnal sort of pastel-y type colors. Which you can see in front of you. So stay tuned for things as they progress on that site. Now that we've got the site brand finished, we will then start drawing up the brochures, integrating CGIs, looking at the hoarding design. And again, if there's hoarding design options coming through, make sure to follow us over on Instagram, because we'll put those up as a poll as well, so we can crowdsource your input into what we do going forward, because we can have all the ideas and our opinions in the world, but if our opinion isn't what the masses want, or what the likely buyers of our schemes want, then there's no point in doing it. We have to tailor our schemes to what will sell the best. And I think I've got, actually, so we go, you can see them better on screen. So option A, option B, option C. We ended up with option B. Anything else you want to say on the branding, Jack? You weren't too keen.
I wanted a leaf logo, but
wanted a leaf. Yeah.
I thought the logo we've gone for is very mansiony, very sort of central London-y, mansiony, and I feel that autumnal is very in. I love a bit of autumnal.
Yeah, I think the logo looks high quality. I think it'll suit well, but time will tell, I guess, in terms of how it's perceived and received by the public and the buyers that are looking to buy it. But there we go. Onto another site which we are very, very close to being in the sales process. It's Thame, which is our St Andrew's Court. On the right hand side, you can see an image of the CGI of what those mezzanine 1-bedroom flats will look like, which I think look amazing. I'm super excited to see them getting finished. And the image on the left hand side is actually the creation of the inset balconies, which has been done over the last couple of weeks. So got planning approval for some external works to add a basement, to add a balcony, to add some garden spaces, and also these inset balconies, which is what you see on the screen. So we'll have a glazed balustrade wrapping around the outside of that. It's about 9 to 10 square meters of external private amenity dedicated to those top floor 1-beds. and it's just going to let in so much light into the rest of those, that kitchen, dining, living space. So super excited to sort of see that get pulled together. In the next 4 weeks, we should have that all finished and wrapped up. We mentioned a number of weeks ago about site signage that we've had up on site. That site signage has raised over 15 inquiries via the QR code and phone-ins and emails, which is amazing. And our sales consultant is taking 5 of those 15 on site on Monday to view a sneaky peek, hard hat developer open day, specific for those 5 sort of off-market buyers, which is great. If we can get one of those flats sold in this first bunch of 5, that would be absolutely incredible. We've got sales agents signed up on this project, but this is the one where, if you tuned in a couple of months ago, we've brought in a sort of private sales consultant to work on our behalf, and that's been invaluable, really, getting to this stage. He's the one that's going to be showing these potential buyers around. It means that instead of paying 1.5% fee for any sold at this stage, we're paying kind of half of that through the sales consultant. So I'm sort of hopeful that one of those 5 will want one of the units. Hopefully feedback next week in next week's live will be that it was well received and we've got an offer on the table for at least one of those flats. But you never know, it's a tough market. We'll just have to see how things play out. Cool. Sharing too
much for the team.
This was one of mine, but I'll let kind of Jack have a chat as well. But last week we do every 3 times a year, we try and do a sort of group strategy day, where often it's hosted in Henley. So all of the Henley team are sat around that table in the Bull pub. We get some drinks and nibbles in. More often not, the Aura team and anyone else that can't make it will zoom in and tune into the conversation. But it's generally about a 2-hour session, once 3 times a year, where it's a chance for Jack and I to relay updates, information, progress on all of the businesses within the ecosystem. So for those that don't understand everything and haven't been tuning into us recently, we run 5 main businesses. So we've got XP Surveys, the measured survey practice at the front end of the process. We've got Aura Architecture and Interiors, which is an architectural and interior design practice. XP Property can deliver on the projects. Central Suites, which is Jack's business with Rob, his brother. It's a HMO management and portfolio management, property management company. And then we've got Aparo Social, which is our social housing stock that we've been building over the last 3.5 years. So big ecosystem of businesses. There's about 30 people, 30 team members across those businesses. So this strategy day is a chance to feed back all of the really good stuff that's going on in amongst the businesses, and bring everyone into that conversation. So there'll be surveyors that have surveyed a site at the front end and can actually see projects progressing in photos that they surveyed a year ago. So for them to kind of buy into that process, it's great. They see what's actually coming out of the service that they provide at the front end, for example. So the main reason of bringing it up, though, is we've had numerous people say, do you think you share too much as a business? Doing these things, and literally, in every business, we'll talk about the financial side of everything, profitability for the year, or lack of profit if that's the case, and a lot of companies and a lot of business owners don't want to share that information, and I think it's the wrong way about things. I think what I found in Aura and in XP, and being open and transparent about the whole performance of the company, is that everyone can buy into it. They understand the trials and tribulations, understand when things need to be upped a gear. They get rewarded when the company is doing well, and it gives people a chance to kind of see what it's like as a business owner in terms of the roller coaster that it is, and have an impact on how the performance of the business runs. So I think you can't share too much, really. Would implore everyone listening to this, if you are a small business owner and you want buy-in from the team, to be open and transparent with things, and share as much as you can, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of elements that you know, what you obviously don't want to do is scare them about job security, because that would have the adverse effect. But you want to sort of share the reality of where everything's at. Otherwise, they might not understand the full picture. And you'd like to think the team are all singing on the same hymn sheet to deliver that. You know, we've interviewed to sort of take a snapshot of why we believe the holistic understanding of everything is really important. We've interviewed surveyors before that only do site work, and they go, the only reason I want to leave my job is because I want to do more in the office to see what is actually being drawn up and be part of the full process of just the surveying part. But if you actually think about all the ailments that go into a development, so survey, design, development, maintaining, they also want to see out the bigger picture. My view is if you can't explain yourself what we do as a group, you know, how is anyone else externally going to understand that either? So it's about bringing everyone on the same page, understanding exactly what we do. Coincidentally, I actually asked Amy in our team today, I said, when your friends ask what you do, what do you say you do? So annoyingly, she said they don't ask, but I'm sure, like, you know, I was just interested to know from you know, I know what I say, and I know what I say I do for work, but you know, that sort of stuff interests me. That if you're you know, if they're sat around a pub having a drink with their friends and they say, well, I actually work in a property group, you know, I'm managing the surveying day to day, but we do other things like developments and architecture and you know, the surveying for the stuff. And there's also a business that does management. That's kind of like where we want to get communication out there into the world and the market and their colleagues and the friends, and you know, because you don't know where opportunities might represent themselves. I think one of the main reasons we drove to do this is because, you know, even my mum today doesn't have a clue what business is what, and it's just like, I wish I could just sit her in and just let her watch these, like, but maybe a shorter version.
You could share the recording, and she can have a, you know, 2 hour evening binge of.
Yeah, I was actually going to share the independent video because it's a 10-minute snapshot. But that's an example that someone's so close, but yet so far away from actually what's going on. It's a lot to keep up with and understand and really get your head around it, which is really important. Like I'm a really sort of like overview person before you dial down into understanding the detail of something. I think if you can't see the bigger picture first, it's really difficult to do well with a little picture item.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'd love to know what people's comments are, because, you know, I did meet for lunch with Ollie James of Property Branding yesterday, and you know, he was taken back a little bit about, you know, how much I do share from a, you know, financial perspective. So you know, you show everyone your profit margins, and I'm like, yeah, you know, I think when I first started the business, I was very close guarded with all that stuff, but I've learned that the more you sort of share from that perspective, the more buy-in you get from the team. And it's, you know, it's a great way of them understanding the ins and outs of the business, not just their particular role. I think the beauty of our ecosystem is that everyone on that call at some point will interact with each other most of the time. So giving them, you know, having that meeting where everyone comes together and can see and sort of build those relationships is going to make their day-to-day relationship more efficient and, you know, better and more friendly, and you know, only sort of grease the wheels a little bit further. So yeah, let us know down in the comments. You know, do we share too much? Do you think, even with these live events, you know, live broadcasts, you know, we've had people say that we share too much, and I just think, you know, it's about substance, right? You know, if you've got something to hide, then you shouldn't share anything. But I don't feel like we have anything to hide. You know, we're trying to do our best, get out there and do what we can do, and you know, share our knowledge and expertise, because I do think that it comes back. You know, I do believe in that, you know, karma to a certain degree. But yeah, let us know.
Yeah,
what you
and
think.
a lot of good suggestions have been made in the room, and a lot of good questions are allowed in the room. And also, what you have to remember is your team might not feel comfortable asking you a random question about a random part of a different business just day to day. You know, they might not feel comfortable going, you know, how does that work in that business? Because that is quite an intrusive question off the bat. But we invite it. We're saying, anyone got any questions on this, or anyone got any specific questions? Another thing I wanted to touch on is from a business owner or a hiring manager or line manager, it's sometimes really difficult to give up your own time to help the people around you in your team. But the way I always see it is that your time can normally be 10 or 100x beyond what the time that you spend with them. So for an example, if you sit down with a member of the team and help them for an hour, they then may improve that month by 3 hours, which is obviously a 3 times return on your time. So that, the way I see it, is they're like a like an element of how you go about managing your management and your business, and how you help them sharpen the tools so that it makes their life easier to do whatever they need to do. And I feel that with our site shares, even for example Tess, who's actually probably our only remote worker, I think gets really a lot of clarity around sites to and actually speeds up her work, which is really useful for her. But for us, it's double win. We're getting that back and as a return on investment of our time and putting this together.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. We've come to the end of what we wanted to talk about this week. I haven't got any questions on the screen. So, if you do have any questions about anything we've talked about, let us know down below in the comments and we can speak about it next week. But anything else you wanted to talk about, Jack?
Nothing in particular.
Cool. All right. Well, we will call it a day there then. If you've got any suggestions for us, that things you want us to talk about in these Friday lives, then just let us know. Like I say, we're open, we're transparent, no question. We won't ignore something because it's too difficult or too hard for us to share. We've probably gone through the process or know someone that has, that can respond to it. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully see you next week, and have a great weekend, everyone.